Thank you. I want to say a bit about what shale gas can do for the UK. And my view is that shale gas will be transformational, will be a game changer. So I'd just like to go through a bit of the logic of why I think that should be. I'll give you a scenario on what it might do for gas prices, but it is just a scenario. And I'll finish with a view of what shale gas production could be like in the UK. Shale gas, of course, is just gas. It's often called unconventional, but there's nothing unconventional about the gas itself. It is just gas, natural gas, North Sea gas. And the way it's extracted as well, there's nothing unconventional about that. For fracking, for example, I'm told there's been over 2,000 frack jobs in the UK, and of those, 200 of those have been onshore. But this year, all the fracking jobs that have taken place, they've all been offshore. There hasn't been a single frack job onshore in the UK this year. And that's probably the difference in the UK between shale gas and sandstone reservoir gas, is that shale gas is onshore and sandstone reservoir gas is mostly offshore. But first, could I just tell you a little bit about who Reach Coal Seam Gas are? Reach Coal Seam Gas has got a large licence in the Midland Valley in Scotland. That's the yellow outline that you see there. It's 400 square kilometres. Our neighbours immediately to the north are Dart Energy and BG. BG now have an enormous amount of shale gas in the United States and a lot of coal seam gas in Queensland in Australia. But they started footering about with shale gas, with unconventional gas, right here in central Scotland. And Dart Energy have a production site at Erth near the Kincardine Bridge. And that at the moment is the only onshore gas production in Scotland. The only onshore oil production in Scotland is up at Leibster in the extreme north of Scotland in Caithness near Wick. Reach doesn't own any of the oil field anymore, but it did when it was drilling, and that's a picture there of the rig drilling on the cliff top there. The well went from the cliff top 3.5 kilometres offshore out into the North Sea, into the Murray Firth. The rig's not there anymore, and the site just looks like one of those farmyards now, but that's what it used to look like, a very beautiful part of the country. And Reach is one of the few companies in our industry that's founded and run by a woman. It's named Reach after the S Club 7 song, Reach for the Stars. Anyway, some of the reasons why shale gas might not impact the UK oil supply position are shown here. Doug mentioned one or two of these ones here. The reasons why I think it will be a game changer in the UK and will affect the UK supply position are these ones here, which you see are exactly the same. So I'd just like to go through some of these points to ease out some of the points from those. I've added a couple of points at the bottom: government policies and social acceptance. And Tony went through those a little bit. So, but just to mention that there's lots of reports that have been government reports from various societies and so on. For example, on the fugitive emissions, the leakage, there was an environmental agency report that was published in August. And one of the points that it analysed the emissions from the States in those papers that have been published, and pointed out that a lot of the data is 12 years old. And if you think about it, in this country, very small leakage in the UK pipeline system at the moment, but what, 12 years ago, well, I don't know, when was it that it wasn't that long ago that we had leather seals in the pipeline system onshore here. So we do get better as time goes on. But if you want to know any of these issues, then there usually is a report for it, and there's been a parliamentary select committee last year, and there's another one asking for submissions at the moment. But just to go through some of these points, the first point is the productivity of UK shales are not known, and that's both the previous speakers have mentioned that, and that's very true. We do need to do a lot more drilling to find out just how big the resource is. There's a big range, and there always will be a big range until we do a lot more drilling. We have done a lot of, all the companies have done lots of mapping of the shales and measurements on cores, for example, and they all look very positive. The total organic content, the kerogen type, the maturity, the thermal maturity, the shale porosity and permeability, the Poisson's ratio, the Young's modulus, the core gas content, gas saturation, and Langmuir isotherms. All that stuff does suggest that it's very exciting what we could have in the UK. But we certainly need to drill a lot more. And the second point there, it's often said that we have stricter environmental regulations in the UK than in the United States. And I don't understand that point at all. Why? You won't hear anybody in the industry asking for less strict environmental regulation. We want them to be appropriate and not to be misused, but nobody's asking for less strict environmental regulation. So, but let me go on to the next point, that the UK is more crowded than the US. You might have heard that point quite a few times. And let me just examine that a little bit more. Could I just use, instead of using the United States, because it's a big place with varying from Manhattan Island to the deserts of Nevada, so let me just use Pennsylvania as an example, because Pennsylvania is a big gas producer, shale gas producer. Pennsylvania is smaller than England, it's larger than Scotland, it's got a smaller population than England, a larger population than Scotland, a smaller population density than England, a larger population density than Scotland. So it's we could use that perhaps as a comparison, if you'll allow me. But when you're looking at population density, you have to really look at a particular area in particular to see what the an area where we might be doing shale gas. Sorry about the black line in there. This is an area on the Reach license, Airdrie. The black outline is the Airdrie administrative area. Chose this because there's some of you might have worked here at the Glen Mavis LNG plant, which is there. And it has a population density of about 300 per square kilometre, which is quite high. But if you look at that map, from what you can see of it, most of the people are huddled in the bottom left-hand corner there. And you see up in the middle, in the top right there are areas, each of the blue squares is a square kilometre, and there are areas where you could get a development site in there. You'd only need one development site. So you can have that there. There is space to have it. And you want a reasonable density of population. I think this is about the right density of population that you have, because if you don't have much population, then how do you monetize the gas? And where do you get the workforce from? And Airdrie is blessed with a large skilled workforce and very good infrastructure. The main pipelines from St Fergus come right through the middle here. There's motorways all the way around. There's a brand new railway lines being built right through the middle. And there's the LNG plant that I mentioned there. The red areas, by the way, are areas of deprivation. Those areas of deprivation are largely because of the relatively high levels of unemployment, the lack of job opportunities, and the relative lack of economic activity in the area. The people of Airdrie deserve a better lot than they've got, and shale gas holds out the prospect, at least, of more job opportunities and more economic development activity. And I think it's a great shame if the people of Airdrie are denied those opportunities simply because of stuff downloaded off the internet. If I could give you an example, in the black area there, you can't see it, but there's a little town called Salisbury, which isn't a red area, isn't an area of deprivation at all. But Salisbury is quite high up, it's 700 feet above sea level, so it has quite a cold climate, even by Airdrie standards, and they're not on the gas grid, so they have to heat their houses with electricity, and electricity costs nearly 4 times as much as gas. So there's a serious problem of fuel poverty in Salisbury, and yet there's gas underneath their feet. We know there's gas underneath their feet because there's been a couple of gas wells drilled there. One was drilled as part of the Second World War effort by the Americans. So there's gas there, but yet there's still fuel poverty there. So it seems a great shame that if the people of Salisbury are again condemned to fuel poverty and not allowed local gas simply because of sort of non-rational decision making. And they're not doing their carbon footprint much good in Salisbury either, because using electricity, because we're very proud in Scotland of the amount of renewables that we have in the electricity mix in Scotland, but we spoil it all by burning a lot of coal. The coal comes mostly from Russia, and it's offloaded on the west coast and put onto trains and sent across to the coal-fired power stations on the east coast. And there, about 40% of the energy is turned into electricity. Then the electricity is transmitted back to Salisbury again, where it's used to heat their houses with the gas under their feet there. Another point that's used for why shale gas might not happen here as much as in the States is because the landowner owns the hydrocarbon rights in the States. And that is an issue here. Here is a Google Earth map of what looks like Leicestershire, but it's actually Pennsylvania. It's actually Dimmock, Pennsylvania, which in the press has the press reports that's been devastated by shale gas. So that's why I went on to originally to look to see if we could see any evidence of devastation there. Look for yourselves, but it's also featured a lot in the Gaslands film. Particularly people in Carter Road are interviewed there. That's Carter Road there. But I was surprised when I saw this. I saw all this. Look at all these rectangular blobs all over the place. There's loads of them, and those are when you zoom in, you can see those are well sites, and the well sites seem to be spaced about half a mile apart. It looks very odd to me. Why would they have them so close together? It's just it's not efficient, it's not right. And if you zoom in, you can see that a lot of those well sites are within, well, all those well sites on that picture are within 200 metres of a house, and many of them are within 100 metres of a house. So why are there so many well sites there? And I think that is because due to the hydrocarbon rights. Each farmer has the hydrocarbon rights, so he can negotiate with an oil company to sell his hydrocarbon rights. So each farmer negotiates, makes a different deal with a different oil company, and so you get a well site on every farm, essentially. And hence you get the large number of well sites there. And in a society, landowners tend to be the more affluent people in society, so that the more affluent people, the landowners, get paid large royalties, and those without any land get nothing. So the rich get richer and the poor get nothing, and that's just divisive and unfair. And if you watch the Gaslands film, that's what all the people interviewing say on it. They all say, before they set fire to their water taps, they say that my neighbour has the mineral rights, has the hydrocarbon rights, and I don't. And they're pissed off. They know perfectly well it's not shale gas, of course, but they don't care. They're just pissed off because their neighbour is getting something for nothing and they're not. So it's a very unfair system. Whereas in the UK, we all own the hydrocarbon rights here. We don't have any shale gas production in the UK, but we do have a very large oil field that's producing in Dorset, Witch Farm oil field. This is Poole Harbour here. This is Bournemouth up here. This is Sandbanks, where there's some very expensive property there. Harry Redknapp owns a house there. Actually, I think it's Harry Redknapp's dog that owns the house there. But anyway, a very beautiful part of the countryside, and a large oil field is developed there with almost 200 wells on it. These are the well sites there. I think there's 3 well sites altogether that's on there. And the Witch Farm oil field, it's a long cigar-shaped field which goes out into Bournemouth Bay there. And the wells are some 11 kilometres or longer now. And if you do the maths on that, you could develop, if this was shale gas, you could do a radius of about 400 square kilometres from just one site. And that's probably what shale gas will look like when it comes about. Maybe 400 square kilometres is a bit large. 100 square kilometres is probably about right. So that's why I said that an area like Airdrie there could be developed with just one site. The UK tax system is often said there's been tax breaks in the States. I don't know about the UK tax system, but the US tax system, but the UK tax system is an eye-watering 62%. It's the same as for the offshore oil and gas industry. The Treasury has been very good at doing what it's supposed to do, of maximising the revenue from the oil and gas industry, and that's what it's done. It's refined it over the years. There used to be royalties, there used to be a thing called petroleum revenue tax, but they reduced the revenue to the state, so they've all got rid of, and so now they just have a straight net revenue as high as they can, taxation, corporation tax. Offshore gas has always been quite marginal, so that there has been recently a couple of tax breaks for offshore gas fields. There's one for English gas fields in the North Sea recently. But oil and gas is a big provider of revenue to the government. The fourth quarter was badly affected. The second quarter results, borrowing requirement was badly affected by the shutting of the Elgin gas field, and shale gas could also provide a big potential boost of tax revenues. So people say, what's in it for me? Well, there's 62% in it for you, for everybody in the UK. Cost prices in the service industry. Costs are higher here, but then prices are also higher. So let me talk, you're interested in what it'll do for gas prices. So let me say a little bit about gas prices. This is a slide of the global gas price linkages from Howard Rogers. One of the things that's greatly facilitated shale gas in the United States is the fact that they have this liberalized liquid spot market. They have Henry Hub in the States, which has greatly facilitated shale gas, and the only other place that you have it in the world is right here. So it could be here because we have NBP pricing of a liberalized, efficient gas market, gas on gas pricing, that it could well be here that it takes off next rather than in the rest of Europe. This is a picture of gas prices, and we've already seen this picture before. You see that when the recession happened, oil prices fell down, and then as oil recovered, all gas prices increased, except for Henry Hub, the US prices at the bottom there, where gas prices went low and stayed low and got even lower as shale gas production increased. And the gas price when I last looked for January was for Henry Hub was 23 pence a therm, and for NBP for UK prices was 66 pence a therm, so almost 3 times as much here as in the States, thanks to shale gas. But you can see even NBP prices there seem to be pulled down a bit by the Henry Hub prices, and even the German prices, BAFA, seem to be diverging a bit from the oil index pipeline contracts. So Chris Barton this morning talked about the rigidity of the gas market in Europe, and maybe just if the decline in gas production in the UK was stopped and started to rise again, if gas production started to increase, then maybe that rigidity could be broken, and then maybe perhaps then a combination of that with shale gas could change the gas prices here in the UK. And here's just one scenario of what it might do to gas prices. There's over 100 people in this room, so there's over 100 expert opinions of what gas prices will do in the future, over 200 perhaps. But let me start with just the bottom there with Henry Hub. Said that gas prices have fallen because of shale gas, and also said that they have an efficient market, efficient economic market for gas in the States. So you'd expect that if gas prices fall, then demand would increase, and if demand increased, then that you'd expect that would affect gas prices. Gas prices would then rise. It's taken a long time to happen, but the gas market has increased in the States. Gas is replacing coal for electricity generation, with a big reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in the States as a result. And here, what gas prices are, half the price of oil, but in the States they're a fifth or sixth of the price of oil in the States, natural gas. So there's a big incentive in the States to use natural gas for transportation, and that is happening. You are getting compressed natural gas and LNG for transport. It's happening in a big way now in the United States, and it'd be great if it happened here. Wouldn't London be better if the buses were powered by gas much pleasanter instead of by diesel? So you'd expect that as demand increases, that Henry Hub prices will start to increase, and if you get that break, if you get Europe going to a more liberalised, more breaking the rigidity in the gas market a bit, the oil indexation, then you might well get UK prices coming down closer towards Henry Hub prices. You could get the two prices coming closer together. But you see, as I've drawn it here, it's about the same gas price as what it is now. But it won't necessarily stop the rise in prices. But I think my point is, and this is just one scenario, it could be anything. But I think my point is that the inevitable rise in gas prices is not inevitable. And just let me finish with what I think production will be like in the UK. This is UK supply and demand with a solid bit, the supply position. The UK now imports more gas than it produces, and the last time that happened was when Scottish football was the best in Europe. And you see that gas prices, though, have plateaued a little bit recently, and I think that is because of oil prices. I said earlier that it's been very little. Been very marginal for gas exploration in the North Sea, and so a lot of gas that's produced now is associated gas along with oil. So I think it's dictated a lot by the oil price rather than the gas price. But the overall trend is for declining offshore production. Just a word about coal seam gas. I think coal seam gas will be a game changer. Doesn't look like it, but that's the way on this graph. But that's the way I've presented it. I'm comparing it with two very large numbers, but nevertheless, I think it could be very significant. Very significant if you're one of the 8,000 to 16,000 people whose jobs are created as a result of the coal seam gas industry. For comparison, the coal industry. The number of jobs in the coal mining industry is about this sort of number, so it could be significant. But shale gas should be a lot bigger. Estimates of how much the UK will produce has changed over time. This was a POIRI one that was done a couple of years ago, and recently they updated it to this view here, which we've seen earlier. And I think that view, well, that is transformational, isn't it? That is game-changing, that UK production stays flat rather than declining. And I think for the UK as a whole, that is a reasonable sort of low-side position of what the UK could produce. It's very close to what I've got. If you want but to look at what the upside could be, what the high side could be, let's look again at Pennsylvania there, and that's on the green line there is Pennsylvania. Little old Pennsylvania now produces more gas than the North Sea, than the UK sector of the North Sea. And it's got from nothing to more than the UK in 3 or 4 years. It's staggering how quickly it's risen there. So when will the UK get to that position of producing the same as what the North Sea produces? Probably not 3 or 4 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years, 20 years. So that would give you these sort of production profiles, a high, mid and low case scenario of what it might do for what shale gas production might be. So shale gas might keep gas production the same, it might increase, it might get back towards self-sufficiency again. Just dig in a bit more and see what that would do in the amount of wells that need to be drilled and so on like that. On the low side case, you're talking about 20 wells drilled in 2015, and on the high side, 80 wells drilled in 2015. Remember, we're pad drilling here, so you're just talking about a couple of rigs on the low side, a couple of pads on the low side, drilling in 2015. On the high side, it's only 5 or 6 drill sites that you're talking about drilling there. Maybe the low should be lower, maybe the high should be higher. I don't know, but that gives you an idea of what my own view of what it could be in the future. And what will it do for job creation? Well, if you add up the sums and all of that thing, you're talking about 20 to 50,000 long-term, high-quality jobs created as a result of the shale gas industry. Okay, the oil and gas industry has 240,000, maybe 340,000, depending on what numbers you use. But nevertheless, 20 to 50,000 jobs is a lot of jobs. And if you look at Pennsylvania there's just some numbers from Pennsylvania. If you look at that value added side and the amount of taxation that that they're getting in Pennsylvania. It's quite significant. And that value added is the same as, it's very similar to a GDP number, and that number is the same as 0.5% of the UK GDP. I mean, last week there was dancing in the street because the second quarter GDP was revised from 0.5 to 0.4%. 0.1% makes a huge difference. This is just one industry in just one state in the United States. It is really quite amazing what it's done for Pennsylvania. So that's my conclusions then. Shale gas, I think, will be a game changer, and on the way it'll create a fracking number of jobs, and it'll maybe help to keep gas prices low and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It will overtake UK North Sea production, but I don't know quite when. And I think the UK could become the Pennsylvania of Europe. My own view is that Scotland will be the Pennsylvania of Europe. I think that Montrose will be the new Montrose, Pennsylvania, and Edinburgh. Perhaps one day Edinburgh will be known as the Athens. Edinburgh, the Athens, Pennsylvania of the East.